Now I'm going to go through the solution where you don't have the row ID already hard-coded. So we're still using that cleaned with data interpreter that we were using before, which is very important because it just makes things nice and clean. But you'll notice that in my input step, I've got quite a lot of changes. And that is purely to do with the fact that if you're reading in column headers into R, you can't have any spaces in those column headers, which is a pain. So all I've done is gone through and removed all of the spaces from those column headers. I've still filtered away the null rows. I think that there was only one null row compared to in the previous solution where, yep, there's only one null row at the very top. But yes, it's still, we don't need it, so we'll get rid of it. And then we come into the script tool. So let's go through some of the steps of how we're going to build up this challenge. So if we come over into R, then we're going to load our RServe package. Okay, that just opened up on my other window, which isn't useful, but we're loading in the RServe, and then we just want to write RServe bracket bracket and start that up so that we can actually get R and Tableau to communicate with one another. Now I'm just going to open up the script that I wrote in order to do this challenge. It's called row number. So if I maximize this, then you can see that you've got all the options at the top as well. So I'll just talk you through the function. I wouldn't be concerned by how quickly I'm going to go through it. This took me ages. I'm not very practiced in R. For someone like Arson, I'm sure this was really straightforward, but for me, it takes me a long time. So let me talk you through it. So we've got our row number, which is the function that we're creating in order to add our row number in Tableau Prep. And so we're saying that is a function, and that function will have one thing coming into it basically, and that one thing is the table as it is so far in Prep. And we have these curly brackets for the start and the end of the function. So now we're going to create another column, which is our row ID. And I'm just making this an empty column, or a row column filled with zeros initially. So for our table that we're reading in, add this extra column called row ID and assign to that, a repeated 0 for however many rows there are in our table at the moment. And then I'm just going to use a simple for loop. So for the number of rows that there are, just assign that row with the number that we're currently on in that for loop. So that means that, row 1 is going to have 1, row 2 is going to have a 2, etc. and so forth. And then return our table back to us with this new extra column. So return our data frame. So a data frame is kind of like another word for a table. I'm sure someone will correct me on that if I'm wrong, but it's kind of like a table. And our columns are going to be store, and the store column is going to come from that existing table and the store column there, and we have to go through and do that for each of the columns in the table. And finally we get through to this new column which we have added to our table, and that's how we do that. But in order for this function to work in Tableau Prep, you need to also tell Tableau Prep, hey, what's the data types that are coming in. So we need to basically use this get output schema. And that's just a function which is going to define all of the data types. So it's going to return a data frame again, very similarly. And we've just got each of those fields that we were describing up here. And we're just telling it that this is a prep string and the rest are all prep ints. So numbers, or whole numbers, should I say, integers. And we can do a lot of testing. If we wanted to run this in our console, then we can run it like that and go back to the console here. And then we could create our table in R and test it out here. But I know this already works, so I'm not going to waste time doing that. But basically, to get back to that script, you just need to open it again. Here it is, and you can save it, etc. and so forth. So let's go into Tableau Prep and see how that's working. So first of all, you need to connect to your RServe. I've already done it, so you need the server name to be localhost, you need the port to be, oh, I just deleted it. You need the port to be 6311. I'm not sure what's happening there, but that's fine. And then we sign in, and that all works. And we find our file name, which I call mine row number, and we just need to type in the function name, which is also called row number, just so that it knows what function to look at. And then you can see in the description tool that we've now got a row ID, which is awesome. So similarly to how we solved it before, we're just going to use that wildcard pivot. And then one thing that is slightly different is that because we don't have spaces, we can't use an automatic split to get our month name off. So we just use a left function instead for the first 3, because we know that each of our months has 3 characters. It's not been shortened to 4 sometimes, which is good. It's consistent, so we're able to do that. And then we can just go through similar steps to get rid of that, although we only have sales target here rather than sales target difference. So to make that consistent with how we were solving it above, I'm just going to use a bit of regex here. So I'm saying for this pivot one names field where it's sales target without a space in between, we're going to use a regex extract, and we're going to say that we want, the first capital letter and anything after that up to the next capital letter. So that will give us our sales. Then we're going to put a space in between those two, because now we're going to have anything before that second capital letter and anything after that second capital letter. That's what we're actually extracting because we have the brackets around it. I hope that makes sense. And then we're just going to add on a space difference after that. So I know that I said no hard coding in the other challenge, but I couldn't find a way to get the data interpreter to bring through difference, which was very frustrating. So just brought that through myself. And now all that's a bit different is that this column is named slightly differently. Oh, and the row ID doesn't have a space, so I put that in just so that I can reuse the steps from my flow above. And then literally just by copying and pasting those steps, I can go through and do all the same cleaning. And I did have to change this here because this was obviously the name of this column was different to this column, so I just had to manually swap those round. But other than that, all nice and easy, and we've got the same values. I even did a join on all of the columns to double check that. But there are 2 different ways that you have seen to solve this challenge, and I hope that was useful for you. So thank you for listening.